You don't lose because you're wrong. You lose because you feel the need to prove you're right. Too often. Maybe you've been there. 30 minutes arguing with a stranger online over a detail no one will remember tomorrow. Correcting someone's small mistake, not to help them improve, but just to feel one step above. You win the argument. But when the screen goes dark, what remains is emptiness. Not because you were wrong, but because nothing inside you was allowed to grow. Here's the strange part. As we get older, we know more, yet we progress more slowly. We read more books, listen to more podcasts, carry more correct opinions. And quietly we begin to ask, why do I understand so much and still stay in the same place? Perhaps there is an invisible cost very few people are willing to face. Each time you choose to be right, you may be trading something far more valuable, the ability to grow. Not every truth needs to be spoken. Not every mistake needs your correction. And not every argument is worth winning. The question is no longer, who is right? It is this. Are you growing or simply defending your ego? The problem isn't that you have strong opinions, nor is it that you defend your boundaries. Those things are necessary. A person without a stance cannot truly grow. The problem lies elsewhere. It's more subtle, more silent. It's an addiction to the feeling of being right. Being right delivers a fast reward. It inflates the ego instantly, while wisdom grows much more slowly. And so, we often choose the shorter path. We argue quickly. We prove. We win. But mature people don't play that game. They're not concerned with winning an argument. They're concerned with expanding their map of understanding. Because understanding doesn't come from standing in one place and defending it at all costs. It comes from stepping to the other side, even if only to see the world from a different angle. Each time you choose wanting to be right over wanting to understand, you close a door to learning, not only with the person in front of you, but with yourself, even when they are wrong. Marcus Aurelius once wrote calmly, "If anyone can show me that I am wrong, I will gladly change." He didn't say this because he was weak, nor because he lacked confidence. He said it because he understood one thing clearly. Truth always matters more than the ego. And only when the ego steps back does wisdom have room to step forward. Each time you try to prove that you're right, a quiet fee is deducted. It doesn't appear on any bill. No one reminds you to pay it, but it's always there. It's the ego tax, paid with energy, with time, and with openness of mind. We often think arguments only cost words, but in reality, they drain much more than that. They tense the mind, they lock curiosity in place, and they make us less willing to listen the next time. Socrates was considered the wisest man in Athens not because he had answers to everything, but because he always began with a humble line, "I don't know." That sentence didn't make him weaker. It freed him from the obligation to defend his ego, and it was precisely that emptiness that created space for wisdom to enter. In modern life, the ego tax is usually collected in very small ways, but very consistently. An argument in a comment section. You type one more long reply, then another. 30 minutes pass. No one changes their mind, but you're exhausted. You haven't learned anything new, only a lingering irritation that follows you into the evening. Here's a simple tool, but a remarkably clear one. Before you respond, pause for a single beat and ask yourself, what is the cost of needing to be right this time? If the answer is your peace of mind, your focus, or the chance to understand more deeply, then this is no longer a debate. It's an expense. And when the cost is higher than the benefit, a wise person doesn't try to win more. They stop, not because they've run out of arguments, but because they know this conversation is not worth their energy. Curiosity doesn't make you weaker. It does only one thing. It lets you see more. We often confuse curiosity with hesitation, asking questions with having no backbone. But that's a common misunderstanding. The person who rushes to push back is often the person afraid of losing their position. The person who is truly grounded is the one who can slow down and see the whole picture clearly. Richard Feynman had a simple rule. Before rejecting any idea, he forced himself to understand it well enough to explain it back fairly and clearly, not to agree, but to make sure he wasn't defeating a distorted version of the truth. In daily life, the difference between victory and curiosity is often just one question. In a team meeting, when someone says something you believe is wrong, your first instinct is to correct, to jump in, to prove. But instead, you ask, slowly, what angle are you seeing this from? That one sentence can change the entire atmosphere. A clash becomes an exploration. Defense turns into dialogue. This is where the curiosity ladder matters. Don't leap straight into rebuttal. Climb one step at a time. First, clarify. Where is this idea coming from? Then, understand the logic underneath. What makes them think that? Only after you understand does your opinion carry real weight. And the application is simple. Every time you disagree, give yourself one small discipline. Before you state your view, ask one real question. Not a trap disguised as a question, but a question that opens the door. Because sometimes what makes you grow isn't the answer you deliver, it's the question you're patient enough to ask. There is a way to win an argument that actually leaves you poorer in thought. It's defeating the weakest version of someone else's argument. You distort their idea slightly, simplify it, then knock it down with ease. The ego feels satisfied, but wisdom doesn't move an inch. Mature thinkers do the opposite. They seek to understand the strongest version of the other person's argument, not to lose, but to ensure that if they do challenge it, they are challenging the truth, not a straw figure. John Stuart Mill warned clearly, misunderstanding your opponent is not only unfair to them, it is a form of self-deception. Because when you defeat a weak idea, you prove only one thing, that you are stronger than something that wasn't worth much to begin with. In family life, this test appears more often than we realize. An argument with someone close. Emotions rush in. Each person hears only half of what the other says. Try something different. Slow down. And restate their view, in your own words. Not to argue, but to confirm. Until they nod and say, yes, that's exactly what I mean. That moment matters. It shows that you're not just hearing, you're understanding. This is the core of the Steelman technique. Restate the other person's position as fairly, clearly, and strongly as possible. Only then does your argument stand on solid ground. The application is strict, but powerful. Only challenge after the other person agrees that you have understood them correctly. Because the goal is not to sound smarter, it is to see more clearly. And clarity always begins with respect. Growth is not a victory. It's a long game. The ego always wants a quick win, a sharp line, an argument that shuts the other person down instantly. Wisdom is different. It doesn't rush. It cares about how far you go, not about standing on the highest podium for a brief moment. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journal every day, not for others to read, and not to prove that he was right. He wrote to correct himself, to revisit small reactions, fragmented thoughts, moments when the ego slipped in without being noticed. No audience, no immediate reward, just one person quietly adjusting his direction. In modern life, this long game is often forgotten. You come across an opinion that irritates you. A debate is waiting for you to join. You could jump in and win, but instead, you step aside. turn off the screen, and use that time to read a few pages, write a few lines of reflection, or simply sit still to understand what you're reacting to and why. That isn't avoidance, it's an investment. This is where the growth lens brings clarity. Before every reaction, ask yourself one direct question. Who will this help me become in 5 years? If the answer is more tired, more tense, or simply right one more time, then it isn't the long-term path, and the final application requires more strength than it seems. Choose intentional silence, not because you're afraid to speak, but because you know exactly what deserves your time, your energy, and your attention. Because in the game of growth, the winner is rarely the one who speaks the most. There was a period when I was very quick to correct others, not out of malice, but because I believed I was helping. I read a lot. I understood a lot. And whenever I heard something inaccurate, I felt responsible to speak up. I won many arguments, at least on the surface. But slowly I noticed something uncomfortable. I knew more, but I understood less. Conversations grew heavier. People became defensive more quickly, and I felt tired, not from a lack of arguments, but from constantly holding a position. Then came a very small moment. Nothing dramatic. No big turning point. In a familiar conversation, the old instinct appeared again. I was about to push back immediately. But that time, I paused. Just 30 more seconds. I kept listening. Not to prepare a response, but to understand what had led them to think that way. Those 30 seconds changed more than I expected. The other person's voice softened. The conversation slowed. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel the need to defend myself. From then on, I began to change, quietly, correcting less, listening longer, asking more questions. Relationships felt lighter. My thinking grew deeper, and I wasn't as tired as before. No one needs to know how I changed. There's no need to present it as an achievement. It's enough if the listener recognizes one familiar truth. They've been there too. Being right feels good. The feeling is clear, immediate, and easy to get addicted to. But being understood and understanding others is the long path of wisdom. Because understanding doesn't inflate the ego. It expands the mind. It helps you react less and begin to choose. Not every disagreement needs an immediate answer. Not every opinion needs correction. And not every truth requires you to stand up and defend it. Sometimes growth doesn't come from saying the most correct thing. It comes from knowing when to listen and when to step aside. So carry this question with you into your next disagreement. Do you want to be right, or do you want to grow?